Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Vrinda and Sriram. That's a wonderful kirtan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome to International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Bergen County, New Jersey. Our founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you very much, everyone who joined us today for our Sunday program, and our warm welcome to those who are joining us first time tonight. So we are very fortunate to have our guest speaker tonight, His Holiness Rompa Swami Maharaj. Let me give brief introduction about the Maharaj before we begin the class. His Holiness Rompa Swami Maharaj joined the Hare Krishna movement in 1970, and in the July of 1971, Maharaj received his first initiation from his spiritual master Srila Prabhupada. He later received his second initiation in the summer of 1972. Maharaj spent many years in the New York temple and served as a temple president and Sankirtan leader. For years, Maharaj was fully dedicated to the book distribution. In 1983, Maharaj accepted sannyas order of the life, and in 1985, Maharaj became an official initiating spiritual master within ISKCON. Aside from traveling extensively throughout the world teaching Bhakti Yoga, Maharaj also served as a GBC for many temples within ISKCON. Through his careful cultivation, there are robust spiritual communities in several major American cities, Guyana, India, and China. Maharaj is very active in college preaching as well. Maharaj is going to give us class tonight on the topic of Vibhisana surrender. So without further ado, let us unmute ourselves and join me in welcoming His Holiness Rompa Swami Maharaj by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Maharaj, may I request you to begin the class, please?
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale
Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanjavadi Paschatyate Satarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. After that very enthusiastic Hare Krishna Maha Mantra together, I hope you muted yourselves again. Because Ram Navami is coming very shortly. The talk this evening is, as you see on the screen, accepting Vibhishan's surrender. The beautiful painting, you'll see one more time. That's Ram and Lakshman receiving Vibhishan and his 4 ministers. Presumably next to Lakshman is Sugriva with the little white beard there, and some other Vanara, perhaps it's Hanuman, but some other Vanara by their side. Tirupalani is a place in South India, very close to the place where the bridge was built to go to Lanka, but not the exact same spot, but it is the place, very celebrated place, where Vibhishan surrendered. And there are several other personalities who also surrendered to Ram. It's a place of surrender. Just as in Gora Lila, there's a wonderful place where many took shelter of him, having offended him during his household life. And it has a similar spiritual significance, Tirupalani. And when you visit there, as we did, you'll feel it, a place of surrender. Now, a little background before we begin. In the whole of Ramayana, it is said by Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, there are 18 cardinal teachings. Now, where does that understanding come from? It comes from Yamunacharya, who taught his disciple Sri Shailapurna, that is to say, Yamunacharya extensively studied and wrote on Ramayana, a very important text for Sri Vaishnavas, as the Bhagavatam is for us, Ramayana is for them. He taught Sri Shailapurna personally. And Sri Shailapurna personally taught Ramanujacharya. There's a wonderful story of how that happened. And in turn, Ramanujacharya passed it on to his followers and disciples. And several generations later, Govinda Raja summarized them, as we'll find in the 5th Sarga of Balakanda. Though some of you may not know who Govinda Raja is. He lived several hundred years after Ramanujacharya. Not exactly known when, but in these time ranges, 1227 through 1500. He was living at Tirumala. He was a very great scholar and poet, and Balaji personally appeared to him in his dream and instructed him to write the commentary. He's very humble as well as very learned, and he writes that everything I'm preparing here is under the order of the Lord, and it's nothing new, it's just taking from the previous acharyas and assembling it all together. But it's most comprehensive of all the commentaries on Ramayana. Included in it, just this little section in Balakanda, describing these 18 cardinal teachings, identifying them, and a modest commentary on them. And in those 18 cardinal teachings, essential in the whole of Ramayana, as far as the Sri Vaishnavas are concerned, is the principle of surrender, illustrated in many, many, many different of these 18 cardinal teachings. And that's why I selected Vibhishan, surrender, because it's on the theme of the entire Ramayana. Now, who is Vibhishan? Well, Vibhishan is one of the brothers of Ravana. There's a painting of Ravana as he went to visit Kailash. He at that time wasn't known as Ravana, he was known as Dasa Griva. Griva means neck, like Haya Griva. He had 10 heads. Imagine having a son with 10 heads. So that's the name that he was given, Dasa Griva. And he underwent great austerities, became very powerful. And among other things, he went to Mount Kailash. And he had riding on this Pushpaka Vimana, he somehow was halted. And so when he came before the carrier of Lord Shiva, Nandi had assumed a form because he had capacity to assume multiple forms, as did the Rakshasas. He assumed the form of a large-bodied animal with the head of a monkey. And Ravana ridiculed him, and Ravana ridiculed Lord Shiva. And to show his strength, he placed his 20 arms underneath Mount Kailash and started to lift it in the air. And Parvati became very disturbed. Lord Shiva said, no problem. He placed his toe on Mount Kailash and it crushed the 20 arms of mighty Ravana, or Dasagriva. For 100 years, he was wailing in pain. That's how he got the name Ravana. Roaring in pain. Finally, Lord Shiva relented and gave some benedictions to Ravana, who then became a very steadfast devotee of Lord Shiva. Now, his name, Ravana, as you see on the screen here, it's the opposite meaning of Vaishravana. Vaishravana is his brother, which means hearing distinctly. Let's take a look at the family tree of Lord Brahma, the first created being, had as one of his sons Pulashtya Muni. Pulashtya Muni married the daughter of one sage, Trinabindu, and his son was named Vishrava. Vishrava was an illustrious Brahmana, and in course of time, he married the daughter of Bhardraj Muni, and his son was Vaishravana. Vishrava's son was Vaishravana. Vaishravana, after undergoing austerities, he received several benedictions, one of which was that he became Kuvera, one of the protectors of the 4 directions of the celestial realm, and of course the treasure of heaven. Now, as fate would have it, Vishrava was going to have a second wife. The second wife wasn't elevated like Bhardraj Muni's daughter. Rather, Kaikasi was the daughter of Rakshasa, Sumali, and Ketu Mati. So Sumali wanted very much for his daughter, Kaikashi, to have very powerful sons. And so he sent his young daughter to go before Vishrava and make an appeal for him to accept her. as his wife, second wife. And he did so. He accepted her, but we'll see in a moment the time at which she came. Well, I'll narrate the story. She came, and he was engaged in his Brahminical duties, chanting of mantras, and absorbed in internal contemplation. And when he noticed her standing before him, he asked her, what is your name and why have you come here? And what can I do for you? And she was very shy. She looked at the ground and said, you're a rishi, you know everything. You know what my purpose is. And he confirmed, yes, I know your purpose. But unfortunately, you come at a time that is very inauspicious. So the sons that you will bear, she wanted to have children with him, the sons that you would bear will be Rakshasas. And she was taken aback, saying, no, I don't want sons that are Rakshasas. So he gave her this compensation. The compensation is your last son will be a great saint. We'll refer to that message shortly and directly from Valmiki Ramayana. So there you see, 3 sons, Dasagriva, who later became Ravana, Kumbhakarna and Vibhishan, and Shurpanaka. Those are the daughter and 3 sons of Kaikashi. So that means that Ravana and Kuvera were stepbrothers or half-brothers from the same father. And when this is what Vishrava said to Kaikashi, as a concession, your youngest son will become famous as a pious man. So we're focusing now on Vibhishan. So when Vibhishan was growing up, his brother, Kumbhakarna, was very busy wandering all over the universe devouring rishis, while Vibhishan was busying himself studying the Vedas. They had very different natures. And all 3 brothers underwent austerities. Not only did Ravana undergo austerities, the other 2, Ravana, we know what he wanted as a benediction from Brahma. Kumbhakarna wanted to be able to sleep a long time. And here's Vibhishan's benediction. My dear Lord, since you are pleased with me, the goal of my life has already been achieved. My only wish is that my mind may always remain steadily fixed upon the path of virtue, even amidst the greatest difficulties. Well, difficulties would surely come. If you have Ravana as a brother, you're going to have difficulties. And his nature didn't change because of those difficulties. Rather, his father pronounced that he will become famous as a pious man. It was his nature. When he was a young man, he enjoyed his life happiness with studying of the Vedas. And we can assume we had his father was an illustrious personality, so he learned diligently from his father. He accepted the qualities like his father, Vishravas. And he had this benediction from Lord Brahma. So his life was like that. And we don't hear so much about Vibhishan until much later, till Ravana does the Ravana program, and especially his kidnapping of Sita and taking her to Lanka. One of the versions of Ramayana, not Valmiki Ramayana, describes the meeting of Hanuman with Vibhishan. Here is, in fact, a painting that illustrates it. The timing was after after Hanuman had met Sita and pacified Sita and made his plan. He then went to the home of Vibhishan and they had this exchange. Of course, in the painting, Hanuman had the capacity to change shapes, and one of those was a Brahman. In fact, that was the same form that Hanuman showed the first time he and Ram met. He had this capacity. And then he went on, after the discussion with Vibhishan, to destroy the garden and burn Lanka and defeating soldiers. And the burning of Lanka happened later, when he was smashing and smashing with a big iron rod all the trees and all the everything, all the buildings, everything in sight. Thousands, 80,000 powerful soldiers were sent to stop him. He smashed them all. Jambamali, powerful general. Look at that fellow, that orange guy. Who'd want to meet that guy? Hanuman finished him. Ravana was furious, and everyone was astonished. One monkey making such turmoil, 80,000 soldiers, and Jambumali, very powerful soldier. Who is this person? So Indrajit was sent with his mystic weapons, and with the mystic weapons, when it hit Hanuman, he was made stunned and tied up with ropes and dragged unceremoniously before Ravana. It was part of Hanuman's plan. He wanted to get a chance to see Ravana face to face, because he was planning to give his spy report back to Lord Ramachandra. So here he is, very large in size, standing before Ravana, and bold as Hanuman was, he said very heavy things to Ravana. You're a wicked person. You've violated the laws of Manu. You've taken the wife of a married man and a great king. This is punishable by death. You will bring destruction of your whole dynasty unless you return Sita to Ram. I've come here as an emissary, a messenger from Ram. Please return. Make peace with Ram, and he will accept you. Ravana was so angry. He ordered, kill him. This is where Vibhishan comes in. Vibhishan interrupted. He's the younger brother of the king, the ruler, and said, according to the laws of Manu, Kshatriya codes forbid a messenger being killed. What one can do, according to the codes of Manu, is one may appropriately punish, but you can't kill. So Ravana accepted, a little reluctantly. He was really angry. So the decision was made. Monkeys like their tail. Get a bunch of rags, soak them in some flammable material, and tie them to his tail and set his tail on fire. Well, that was fine with Hanuman. Sita, from the grove, the Ashok garden where she was, she prayed that Hanuman not feel the pain of that fire. And so Hanuman decided to teach them a big lesson. He set the entire Lanka on fire, and we're going to get back to Vibhishan shortly. But before he returned back to inform Ram that he had found Sita and the whole situation in Lanka, here he is observing the city going up in flames, the whole capital, as he's dangling his tail in the ocean water to cool it off a little. So shortly after Hanuman left, then a big assembly was called with the ministers and generals and his leading people in Lanka, and taking their counsel what to do. This unprecedented event has occurred. What should we do next? And Valmiki Ramayana describes that what do demons do when they get together? They boast about their powers. And they said, no worries, I'll take care of whoever comes, and if they can come, and you're mighty, but you don't need to use your prowess. We're sufficiently powerful. You see this very old painting at the top, that's 10-headed Ravana and his ministers boasting their power and so forth. During this assembly, Ravana's mother's father, or his maternal grandfather, Malyavan, spoke very strongly, similarly to as what Hanuman said. This is in total violation of codes of conduct for a Kshatriya, and it's going to bring ruination to the whole of Lanka. And it's very simple: just return Sita to Ram. And he, wasn't hostile, but he was very clear, instructing. And Ravana dismissed him, paid no attention. Malyavan just left the court. And that was that. And after many others also spoke, Vibhishan, well, let's go back. Vibhishan offered his advice, similar advice to Malyavan's advice. And Ravana was considering his words. He dismissed the court, said, we'll meet again tomorrow. So early the next morning, attempt number 2, Vibhishan went to Ravana's private quarters. He had that privilege. And he gave similar advice, much softer tone, but filled with wisdom, because that was his nature. He was very wise, very learned in the Vedas, and very proper in his understanding of conduct. And he spoke clearly. And Ravana became angry and immediately went to the court. And the third time around, when Vibhishan, after hearing everyone bragging and bragging and bragging, he said, you're not ministers, you're just flatterers. And real ministers are supposed to give good advice to their king. And here's the good advice. And he spoke the same good advice 3 times. And according to the description, Ravana kicked him in the chest and said, if you weren't my brother, I'd kill you. You're an enemy. And Vibhishan understood, very similar to Vidura leaving the royal assembly in Hastinapur, there's no more service for me here. I've tried and I've tried and I've tried, and there's no service for me here. So he left, and he left very dramatically. He just rose in the air, as he had the power to do that. And accompanying him were 4 ministers. These 4 ministers were with him from childhood. They were like him in nature, completely misfits for the capital of the Rakshasa kingdom. And they made their way straight away to Ram's abode. Here we see in this painting, this is Ram and Lakshman on the left, some Vanaras surrounding them. And there's Vibhishan with his sword by his side, and the 4 ministers looking a little differently behind him. So he's going to the camp of Ravana to surrender. Now, when he left, it's a detail, but Vibhishan, similar to Vidura, Vibhishan didn't even say Hari Bol to his wife. Now, his wife was going to receive the same benefit as him. As Vibhishan became the king, she became the queen. She was virtuous like him. They were a fantastic couple. Sometimes it isn't quite like that, but in this case, she was highly virtuous. She plays a certain role in pacifying Sita and so forth. She's a highly elevated personality. But he just went to Ram's place. And here's that same painting that you saw before. And he knew diplomacy or etiquette. He didn't just right away go straight to Ram and say, please accept me. He went through his representatives. So when he descended, it wasn't exactly that he spoke first to Ram. He saw Sugriva and other Vanaras who were really nervous about what's this defector from Ravana's camp. And he made his appeal. Please convey my request to Ram that I wish to be in his service, and finished with Ravana. You know the story very well, I'm sure most of you. The Vanaras were very mistrustful. But Ram, being the ideal king, he did what ideal kings do. He consulted his ministers and his chief generals, and one by one, they didn't agree, but in a general direction, they were not willing to accept Vibhishan. Some said on a condition, some said, let's test him, some said this, some said that. They had different opinions. And Hanuman didn't speak until he was called upon. And when Hanuman was called upon, he said the following. A man is known by his qualities, and the face is the index to the mind. I can see from Vibhishan's face, he's a man of virtue. That is his reputation. And I can hear by the sound of his voice that his quality is also trustworthy. Some of you are saying he's come because he knows that Ravana is going to be defeated and he's ambitious to become the next king. So what? Even if he has a material ambition, he will be under Ram's protection, and his virtue will be the outstanding quality by which he rules. And finally, I know our master Ram, he's already accepted him, because anyone who comes to his shelter, he will accept, as he's accepted all of us. Now, in the painting, there's Vibhishan and his four ministers standing behind him over there on the left. In the left foreground, you see a bear. You all know who that is, Jambavan. And wearing a nice beard, both Lakshman and Ram. We'd never see him in a beard, but here he's in a beard. And there's one of the Vanaras with a crown on his head. That's got to be Sugriva, because he's the king. And so many others with their clubs raised, ready to let them have it. Then Ram speaks in a very celebrated way. One of the most well-known passages in the whole of Ramayana is this one. It is my eternal principle that if any living being takes shelter of me, even once, saying, I am yours, then I award that person freedom from all fear. Now just spend a little bit of time on this sentence, because this is Sharanagati, or as some of the Sri Vaishnavas say, Prapati. And those of you that are from South India, you know that this particular statement of Ram resulted in Sri Vaishnavism having a difference of opinion on surrender. One group said, just once, and the other group said, it's an ongoing process of surrender. Now, our Gaudiya Vaishnava principle is an ongoing process of surrender. The even once doesn't mean once upon a time I surrendered. However, there was a difference of opinion over this verse, and their two groups went in different directions. Still followers of Ramanujacharya and Sri Vaishnavism with other tenets, but this is a very important teaching. Surrendering to the personality of Godhead is the essence of the whole of Ramayana. And Vibhishan's surrendering to Ram is the essence. Now, there were others continuing, even after Ram said what he said. Sugriva was nervous and saying, well, I don't trust him. And he's been with Ravana so long, and how can you be with Ravana so long if you have good character, and I don't trust him, and so many things. And then Ram reiterated in long narration how he will accept anyone. He went so far as to say, if Ravana were to come here right now, even after all he has done with Sita, and said, I wish to take shelter of you, I would forgive him instantly and accept him. So that was the showstopper. And Vibhishan was accepted, and in the company of the Vanaras. And one of the first things he was given was some service. When you surrender, you want to do some service. So he was given some service. One of the services given to him was, please describe the strengths of the enemy, because he knew very well. I mean, Hanuman also knew, but Vibhishan knew, very extensively. Then another service, please provide a suggestion how we can cross the ocean 800 miles to reach Lanka and redeem Sita. And he had a very practical suggestion. Lord Ramachandra, in the Ikshvaku dynasty, one of your predecessor kings was named Sagara. And Sagara's sons were very, very busy searching for the ashram, the horse that had strayed, kidnapped by Indra. And they dug up the earth. And because the earth was dug up, when the Ganges descended, the oceans were formed. And so the ocean personified, Samudra, is very indebted to you through your ancestors. So if you seek his assistance, surely he'll be able to help you. Very practical. And of course, he did many other services, many other services. Now, an important aspect of this surrender is given by Sri Vaishnavas in the following way. The four ministers represent four aspects of surrender. 2 and 2 make 4. So there's the Sharanagata, the one who's surrendering, and this first characteristic of surrender is akinchanatvam. Akinchana, we know from Queen Kunti's prayers. Akinchana gochara, akinchana vitaya, akinchana, having no material possession. Akinchana. And tvam means having the quality of akinchana. So this is one of the characteristics of surrender. I possess nothing which I view as my shelter. So that means your hands are empty, but then ananya gatitvam, you have full shelter in the personality unto whom you're surrendering. Ananya gati tvam. Ananya means no other. Gati means goal or destination. I have no other place but you. Since I have nowhere else to go to take shelter, I take full repose. I fully repose my shelter-taking spirit in the Sharanya, the person giving me shelter. So it's quite similar. I have nothing except you. I have nothing except your shelter. That's the mood of the Sharanagata. And then there's the Sharanya. That's the person unto whom one is surrendering. And there are two characteristics, according to the Sri Vaishnavacharyas, that are essential. The Saralata is one of the characteristics of the person unto whom one is surrendering, which is certainly Ram. He gives shelter to anyone without any consideration of who they are. Ram gave shelter to anyone. He gave this long speech. I would give him shelter, Ravana. But who did he give shelter to? Not just pious people. He gave shelter to everybody. To a bear, to a squirrel, to monkeys, and anyone and everyone without consideration. So that's a characteristic of one worthy of surrender. And just a little bit further on this saralata. Saralata can also apply to the one who is surrendering. This saralata is a word, the Sanskrit word, used by Bhakti Siddhanta to describe the chief characteristic of a Brahmana. In this essay that he wrote, Brahmanism and Vaishnavism, when extolling the virtues of the Brahmana, this is the most outstanding quality of a Brahmana, and that is their simplicity. In the case of the Brahmana, they're just straightforward. There's no crookedness. There's no duplicity. It's simplicity. It's saralata. Very straightforward, very honest. Like Ram, abide by the truth. There's nothing greater than abiding by the truth. And I will never depart from the truth. So that's a characteristic of a Brahmin or a Kshatriya or a qualified individual. It is certainly the quality of the person whose one is taking shelter. They're not giving consideration. What's your birth, or what's your education, or what's your financial, socio-economic status, culture, race, anything, nothing. That's Lord Ram. Saralata. And Shakti. He had the capacity to give shelter to anyone who took his shelter. Now, in our Gaudiya tradition, we're accustomed to hearing Sharanagati in different terms, which is fine. We know the Padma Purana verse, the 6 limbs of surrender. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote his long 80-something songs on Sharanagati following those same 6, accepting things favorable, accepting things unfavorable, etc. That's the frame or the paradigm that we're used to looking at when considering surrender. Because this surrender of Vibhisana is so outstanding and so important for the whole of Ram's Leela, it's spoken of in this way. And shortly after he was accepted, in the same Tirupalani, 2 spies came, and they were disguising themselves amongst the Vanaras because they had shape-changing capacities. But Vibhisana understood who they were, and Vibhisana disclosed, and the Vanaras are ready to smash them, and Ram accepted them because they surrendered to him. And so this Tirupalani place has that mood, and that's that Shakti. Here's Lord Ram accepting Vibhisana's surrender. So in the whole of Ramayana, the feature of surrendering, of course, some didn't. Ravana, of course, didn't, even with the advice to the contrary. So many times the advice to the contrary. His well-wishing, fearless persons made that suggestion, and some lost their lives because they just made the suggestion. But Ram is ready to accept those who take shelter of him, and I want to make mention that images of visiting Tirupalani and the far more details of this whole pastime of Vibhisana surrender and the other spies, etc. They're found in this yatra section. You can just copy it down if you want, and the videos of all these places that we visited, you'll find there. And I want to make one other mention. There's a disciple of Jayapataka Swami named Vidvan Garanga. And Vidvan Garanga has begun an enormous project of translating not only the whole of Ramayana into readable English, not just a condensed version, but the entire Ramayana, along with different commentaries, and especially this very comprehensive commentary of Govinda Raja. Well, you'll find these 18 cardinal teachings of Ramayana, not only just a list, but explained according to Govinda Raja's writings. And he's a poet and very elegant in his writing, and very, very deep and very involved explanations. Now, his plan, Vidvan Garanga's plan, is that each Ram Nomi, he'll come out with another kanda. So far, 2, Balakanda and Ayodhya Kanda. And the Kishkinda Kanda is huge, so that's supposed to be out now. So to order these, I have them. I can't carry them in an airplane with me, or in a car, but I have them and I read them, and they're wonderful. So I'm not like, this isn't an advertisement for his book, but I really like what he's done. And so this Ram Nomi is Kishkinda Kanda. They can be ordered through what's the place everybody goes to when you order something? Amazon. But if the Amazon has them only in India, and it's too expensive. So if you have friends in India, they can make some arrangement, and when somebody comes back and forth, you can get your copies. It's really worthwhile. So now I'm going back to our first slide, and let's see if there's some discussion. We have around 10, 12 minutes. So Ram Sharan, you can call upon people or tell them to unmute and speak or whatever you'd like. We'll have some time for some discussion.
Yes, Maharaj. Raj, may I take 2 minutes to give quick update on our upcoming programs before I open the floor for question answers? So, let me share my screen real quick. Yes, so this Wednesday we are celebrating Sri Ram Navami. So soon we will be posting the schedule. We will be having the very wonderful programs are lined up. Abhishek, virtual drama, and we'll be having a wonderful class. Will be given by His Grace Shubha Vilas Das. The topic Ram Bharat Union.
Wow,
And
you're very fortunate to have him as your speaker.
Thank you, Maharaj. And following Sunday, we'll be having a class by His Grace Arudha Devidasi Mataji. And then we'll be having a storytelling for children every Thursday, 8:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. And every Friday, we'll be having Bhakti Vrikshas, 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And every Sunday, we'll be having a Sunday school for kids. And we have Bhagavad Gita reading every day noon, 2 p.m. to 12:15. And then every day morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. daily chanting. So please keep visit our websites for upcoming programs. So that I'll open the floor for question and answers. You can raise your hands or you can type. And I also see in YouTube also devotees are watching. They can also type the questions there. Then I can read for Maharaj. Let's see. Maharaj, I have a question before the devotees coming up their question. Um, One of the celebrated video um, in Prabhupada says to surrender, it takes a moment. But why it's so difficult to surrender? Press.
I didn't catch it. Try it again a little louder, please.
Sure, Maharaj. In one of the Prabhupada celebrated video, Prabhupada mentions that to surrender it takes a moment, but it is so difficult to surrender. So could you throw more light on that? Why it is so difficult to surrender?
Sure. It's difficult to surrender because we're attached to the temporary. If we can let go of the temporary, surrender is easy. It's difficult because we're attached to the temporary. We're attached in the mood of enjoying. And if we lose that, the fear is there, I'll have nothing. What if? So it's difficult.
Anyone else? Uh, Ramchandra Babuji?
Hare Krishna. Am I audible?
Yes, Babuji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, my question is when Lord Ramachandra told Ravana that even if at the end, if you surrender unto me, bring Sita and surrender, I will accept you. So he's so merciful. And if we also surrender, sometimes we want to surrender and we say, okay, from today onwards, I'm going to give up my anarthas. I surrender unto you. But then after a year, 2 years, 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, we again find it difficult to fight with Maya. But then the desire is always there that I want to surrender. But sometimes you get punched so hard you fall. Is it okay? I mean, yes, we should not stop, but also not get habituated to that. But at the end of the day, seeing our effort, although we keep failing, is it pleasing to the Lord? Or he is upset that, every time you say, I'll surrender, and then you're back to your norms?
Well, many of you on this call are parents. And you know very well if your child says sincerely, and you know it's very sincere, I want to be a good boy or girl. And then wait a while and they're being mischievous again. Now, as a parent, are you going to feel, look, I don't want you as a child anymore? That's not a loving parent. It's not the nature of a loving relationship. What to speak of the Supreme Lord? So any effort that we make in the direction of submission is graciously accepted, happily accepted. And it's not that, when we slacken once again, that we get some scorn or admonishment or something. We get encouragement, and encouragement can be some ordeal or difficulty or some tribulation or something that forces us once again to stretch our arms in the direction of the Lord like a child to their parent and saying, please help me. So there's an ongoing relationship that doesn't get tarnished by our distraction.
Maharaj, I have a question from the chat. Sometimes devotees feel hurt due to being straightforward. How to deal with such devotees?
Devotees are hurt by our being straightforward with them, or we're hurt when devotees are straightforward with us. What I'm not sure what the question is. Are you?
Yeah, yes, Maharaj, first one.
We're hurt when people are straightforward with us,
Yes.
or when we're straightforward with others, they feel hurt.
Devotees feel hurt when we
Which
are.
is it? Help me.
So that's why I asked the devotees. Devotee confirmed that when we are straightforward with the devotees,
Okay.
so they may misunderstand our feeling. I mean, our meaning.
Well, one of the rules of communication, let's make reference to 17:15 Bhagavad Gita, very important verse, austerity of speech. Speak the truth pleasingly. So we have to know the person, we have to know the audience, so we can speak pleasingly. It doesn't mean we therefore twist the truth and make it untruth, because that's pleasing to the person is to hear something untruth. We don't change the truth, but we have to learn the art of speaking palatably, pleasingly. So it's not necessarily, let's say, there's some adjustment that's needed on both sides. That's called the relationship, isn't it? We want to be considerate of another person's capacity to receive, and we also want to consider being straightforward. I assume that that's one of the questions. I mean, that from the saralata, being straightforward. When we're straightforward, someone may not want us to be straightforward. Now, it so much depends upon you and the relationship and your understanding of how to best communicate the truth. Let's take Srila Prabhupada's position on Christianity. Depending upon different persons, he would speak very, very pleasingly, and sometimes he would speak very. Being a religious person means following the codes of God, and God teaches, "Thou shalt not kill." So why are you killing? No, he would say the same thing in different ways to different people, but he was straightforward. But his interest was not, this ism is better than that ism, but his interest was follow the codes given by God. That was his straightforwardness, and how he said it depended upon the audience. Of course, he was a great acharya, so he knew how to speak, and he could speak very strongly when necessary. So if you find yourself, back to your question, if you find yourself in a situation where persons are unable to hear the truth, you may have to consider the audience and how to express it in a palatable way or something else. You strengthen the relationship so that something that they may need to hear can be heard. And if it's not your place to speak it, you don't speak it. That's another part of that 17:15 Bhagavad Gita. Anything else from our audience? We have maybe something in the room.
Maharaj, we have one more
We
question.
have someone in our room that wants to ask a question. Is that okay?
Okay, Maharaj.
No. Okay. we don't have someone in the room that wants to ask a question.
I have one from the Zoom.
I'm looking at the clock, and the clock says it's time for the class to end, and you're scheduled to move on to whatever the next thing is. So that's maybe what we'll do. Ramachandra, what do you think?
Maharaj, please carry on. As long as there's questions and you can answer, you can take. We are okay to stay on.
Well, there's one question only from this end, and we can speak this one question. You want a microphone?
Sure.
This question is from Shalini Talwar or Snehavali Devidasi. Was there any reason why Sumali wanted a pious son for Kaikasi? As Kaikasi was from a Rakshas family, she was unhappy to hear that her sons will be Rakshasas. Could you please elaborate?
We don't have an answer to why Kaikashi didn't want Rakshasa sons. We know why Sumali wanted him to be with an elevated person so he would have elevated sons, but he was thinking elevated as powerful Rakshasas. So apparently, she wasn't entirely like her father, although she was born in a Rakshasa mother and father family. Apparently, she had some other kind of nature than entirely just like both her mother and father. And therefore, she didn't wish to have Rakshasa sons, man-eating sons. It wasn't a delightful idea for her. That's it. One more. Go ahead.
Second, could this be a possibility that because Hanuman met Vibhishana earlier in Lanka, he knew about Vibhishana's pious nature? That's why he supported Vibhishana's surrender to Lord Rama.
Valmiki Ramayana does not indicate that Hanuman met Vibhishan. It's another Ramayana version that speaks like that. So we can't really go by that standard. Okay? We have one more question.
Guru Maharaj, you mentioned Vibhishana's, when Vibhishana left without saying Hare Bol to his wife, I guess sometimes, I mean, obviously you mentioned she was also
Benefiting.
Benefiting. I don't know if she also surrendering, or I mean, does it matter if the spouse surrenders or not?
Yes, it does matter. Yes, it does matter. I mean, they knew each other. They're married. And his mood and her mood matched. So his surrender meant her surrender. He was, not explicitly, and please accept, although she's not here, please accept my wife. It's implicit. His surrender meant her surrender.
But in the real world, sometimes we have families where wife or husband doesn't surrender. So
you better go say Haribol to your wife.
But does the spouse also get the benefit of the
Of course,
husband's
the spouse gets the benefit. Yeah. Ramchandra smiling. I think we're done, Ramchandra. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Our heartfelt thanks to you, Maharaj. Thanks for being with us. And we're looking forward to have more sessions with you. Please unmute yourself. Please say Haribol to Maharaj.
Haribol. Haribol, my
Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj.
I'm going to request the devotees to stay on for a few seconds. Ramshran Prabhu, if we can bring up our, or Ram Tulsi Prabhu, if we can bring up our
Krishna Guru
flyer,
Maharaj.
Ram Navami flyer. quickly share a Ramnavami flyer so we can just go over the schedule. All right, here it is. So this is our, just enlarge it a little bit. So it's on a Wednesday, which is our Wednesday Sangha. And as Maharaj, even Maharaj mentioned that we're very fortunate to have His Grace Shubha Vilash Prabhu. Those who have never heard him, his book is one of the top sellers in India right now. I need to mute some folks. Okay. So very fortunate to have, he's written a few books on Ramayana, a few series of books. Our program will start at 6 p.m. Again, it's virtual, so there's no reason why we can't be on the call by 6-ish. We'll have Kirtan, Sunday school performance. There's a virtual animated skit. There's Abhishek of Lord Ram. There'll be a quiz, and obviously to end with the class, which is at 8:30. So please join. And that morning also, on special occasions, it's very nice to join the Japa session. You all probably are doing it anyways, early in the morning, but in the Association of Devotees, if you can join for whatever time, please join us at 6 a.m. for the Japa call on Ram Navami Day. And also because we cannot, virtually there's only so much we can do service-wise, labor-wise. But these days, Ram Navami is one of the very auspicious days, Tithi-wise also. So it's always nice to give our hard-earned labored Lakshmi or any donations if one wants to give. It is said on these days one must serve the Vaishnavas, serve the cows, like that. In the modern days, right now we are all on Zoom, but if anybody would like, please visit our website. There's a donation page if you'd like to donate any amount, which will eventually be used in preaching service only. So just wanted to go through this. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Ramshan Prabhu, back to you.
If you don't mind, can you take one question, Prabhuji? Because actually it was due to time limit, Maharaj not able to accommodate, but is it okay to ask?
Sure.
The question was asked through chat. What advice can you give to someone torn between pursuing material gains for the sake of happiness of their loved ones and their own desire to seek Krishna consciousness?
Sorry, I went on mute. Can you just repeat once more so I understand it right? I got the first part.
What advice can you give to someone torn between pursuing the material gains for the sake of happiness of their loved ones and their own desire to seek Krishna consciousness?
Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So I'll just share what I've heard all these years. To be able to, for our loved ones, there's a reason why they are our loved ones. There's a reason why we are in certain families. There's a reason why we are in certain relations. And if we are in a position where somebody is dependent on us, especially, it is our utmost duty to take care of their needs. It is very important. But it should also be done in a Krishna conscious way. So there's no, sometimes, yes, one is torn because one of the persons, your loved one, may be in a different direction, heading in materially fast running, and you want to run in spiritual direction, but they have needs also, and you're the supplier of those needs. So we have to try and fulfill as much as possible, but then always, whether one is in spiritual and material path, there's always discussions between loved ones that, hey, this is beyond our reach, this is really not practical. So we have to have practical discussions but not just refuse or not just accept everything as it is. Since I don't know the situation, since I don't know the example, the exact situation, I'll just give you a generic answer. And we have to take guidance from somebody who we look up to. In these situations, if we are not able to meet, come to a middle point, we have to always take shelter of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. These are the 3 points. So, and in the pursuit of satisfying the needs of our loved ones, we must never, ever give up our desire to move forward in Krishna consciousness. If that happens, you lost the battle between helping somebody in their material life and my Krishna consciousness. Rather, we must see how by satisfying their material needs, making them happy, if we can bring them back to Krishna consciousness. And the utmost important thing I would say from experience is, at the end of the day, if things don't work out, and even if they work out, pray to Krishna. Prayers are our only hope, our only solution, apart from practical things that we have to do. So don't stop praying, and pray for that loved one, that Krishna, please help bring this person, this soul, close to you. And it works. It may take, Krishna may have his own timeline. It may not happen in our time, but we have to continue. We have to, and as far as possible, maintain that relation in a way where things don't get out of hand, and involve somebody external if it requires. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry for putting you on spot.
It's okay.
So that's pretty much. So this project, we don't have anything, we can end up.
Yeah, we can end it.
So thank you for joining.
Anybody? Yeah.
Go ahead, Proj.
Now, I was just wondering, is there anybody joining for the first time today?
I saw the names.
Okay, never mind. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.